The Mix 88.5 Property Update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor Villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratham Nack Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards.
Welcome to this week's Mix 88.5 Property Update with my guest, as always, Tim Gladwin, here on PMTV.
The Mix 88.5 Property Update.
So, another good afternoon and welcome to Mix 88.5 Property Update, brought to you by the Tudor Group. As always, in the studio with us, Tim Gladwin. Good afternoon, Tim.
Afternoon, Russell.
Okay, we've managed to get a nice sunny afternoon. As always, if you want to contact Tim, 038 252 588 is the phone number for his office. Patty@solmansthailand.com is the email address. And if you want to contact us for things that go on with the property update every week, then you can do it by that one, or studio@mix885.com. Either way, you can get hold of us there and give us the information that you need to give us, or ask us a question if you want to. So, it's been a fairly nice day so far today, and it's been a couple of fairly nice days. Has business been the same way? Now, you've had that boom for quite some time. You had a little bit of glitch. Is it the lull before the storm now, because we're almost into high season?
Yeah, for us personally, it's been a little bit quieter the last week. I don't think there's any great shock there. After all, Thailand generally has been going through some relatively momentous times in terms of the flooding, and obviously something that is so newsworthy on a global perspective has a significant impact on the country. I know when my mum tells me that she's seen something on the television news about Thailand, that it's a significant story, because she's not exactly an avid viewer of the news. And I think, it's one of those cases that happen every now and then that pretty much anyone in the connected world has heard about. This is a big news story.
Yeah, but the same for my parents have actually called up or sent emails and said, we're coming over in December. Will the flooding be gone by then? Have you been affected? It looks really bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what tends to go on. With stories of this magnitude, I remember going back to the tsunami. I got a phone call, and the first I heard about the tsunami was my dad on the phone telling me that it had happened. I think it was Boxing Day, and I was still snoozing in bed. Yeah. So there are certain stories that do go around the world, and to the eyes of and ears of most people, it's Thailand. You're in Thailand, notwithstanding the fact that Thailand is actually a very large country, and therefore you're affected. So it shouldn't perhaps come as any surprise if people who would otherwise have been here, whether they're coming for a holiday, if they have the ability to postpone it, I'm sure a lot of people have done so. And other people may be coming from places like Hong Kong, Singapore, as I used to in my Hong Kong days.
Yeah.
If I had heard about the flooding, I can imagine I would have postponed a weekend trip, or a long weekend trip that I had planned down here. But more specifically for Pattaya, obviously, as we've discussed in recent weeks, there's a lot of people coming down here now from Bangkok at the weekends, long weekends, that kind of thing. One would anticipate that a lot of those have perhaps stayed at home to keep an eye on the house, to work on putting sandbags up and generally dealing with the flood, or at least the threat of the flood.
I remember the other way around many years ago when the typhoons hit Hong Kong, and I was supposed to be going over to Hong Kong from here, and I'd seen that on the news and went, right, I'm not going to go. And actually friends did go almost at the same time. I went, actually, it wasn't that bad if you managed to avoid this area at this particular time. It was okay. So there is that case of the broad brush that just tars everything the same way. And Pattaya so far has been, reasonably okay, apart from the obvious weekend that was just a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, we are susceptible to floods, but it's more a consequence of the drainage, and I'm not sure any drainage anywhere would be different, given the quantity of water that falls very quickly sometimes. But it's a consequence of the drainage not being able to cope with the quantity of the water. I think that the bigger, more serious floods tend to be river surges, where water builds up over a long stretch of the river's length, and the river goes up and then breaks its banks. And obviously that's a far more serious type of flooding, because until the river level goes down, there's not going to be any kind of prompt solution, and the river level can obviously take some time to go down. Here, once the rain stops and the drainage has a chance to recover, generally Sukhumvit Road clears quite quickly. So I think it's a fundamentally different type of flooding. I'm not saying it's great, but I think that we are relatively safe here, because we don't really have any of these big rivers that run through Pattaya. Obviously, we have a very big ocean, but oceans aren't...
It's going the other way,
Yeah,
so it's
indeed.
hopefully okay. So basically, it's a little bit quiet from what it has been, and we think that's possibly with less visitors coming in because of the floods or because of the threat of floods, even though that at the moment, actually, Pattaya is still pretty dry. There's bits and pieces here and there, and I still see sand and debris over the roads from the 2 or 3 weeks ago when it happened. Hopefully one day they're going to clean that up.
Yes, maybe. But no, I don't think there can be any doubt that there will have been an impact from the floods elsewhere in Thailand. But also, as we've said on many occasions, it is the low season.
Yeah.
The high season hasn't yet arrived. And even when it does, we don't generally suddenly see a situation where the lights are off and then the lights come back on.
Yeah.
All right. As we've said in recent weeks, September, October tend to be the quietest months here because of the likelihood of heavy rain falling, as we've seen this year. And even though it's been a bit nicer the last few days, I mean, I think yesterday afternoon there was an almighty downpour at the office for probably only 20 minutes or half an hour, but there was some short-term flooding in the centre of Jomtien again.
And again, it's very local, because I did see those enormous dark clouds coming across, but I was a bit further out of town at the time, and the rain actually didn't hit. It threatened it and didn't actually hit.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly the same when I drove home shortly after the rain, and we had an absolute deluge in Jomtien, a really quite heavy storm with some, quite threatening thunderclaps. But by the time I was halfway home, and I don't live that far away, we're talking about probably 6 or 7 minutes drive from leaving the office, and it was bone dry.
Yeah.
It may have had a little bit of rain earlier in the day, but nothing even remotely like what we had in the centre of town.
So basically, we've got the high season coming up, where it's going to be fairly good, regardless of weather. It's going to be fairly good business-wise for the next several months.
Yeah, certainly that's the hope. I mean, I think you look at the high season, and perhaps it's not just business that is to look forward to. Certainly from a personal perspective, I very much look forward to the kind of weather that we can normally expect here in Pattaya from the start of November, typically until around the end of March, perhaps 5 months or so. The weather is generally, as most people who've lived here for any length of time will know, clear blue skies, an almost complete absence of rain, temperatures that are certainly warm, and certainly warm enough to be on a type of summer holiday, as we would call it in the West, but without being unbearable. The humidity tends to drop quite significantly, and it's just a thoroughly nice time of year to be here. And I have to say, from my perspective, it's a time of year that tends to pass by very, very quickly, because it is so pleasant to get up every morning. Often, you'll get up, I personally will get up to let the dogs out, and there's the sun shining, but there's a cool breeze, and it's very, very pleasant indeed.
Do you think that's one of the things that make people come over here and buy stuff when they come over and they have that nice period, regardless of what's happened last week or the week before in the floods? They come over and they spend November, December, or January, February, or something like that here, and they go, yes, this is what we want. Let's try and find a place now while we're here. Or they're here for a couple of weeks and that was great, so let's go back and find somewhere. It's just the nice little experience.
It's a combination, I think. You find that some people absolutely fall in love with the place pretty much overnight, and from very, very close to their first experience of the place, they decide they want to have a place here, and that certainly does categorize a number of buyers. But there are others. We do have a lot of buyers who also come in and they say, I've been coming here for 5, 10, 15, in some cases as long as 25 years, and this is now where I want to buy a place. I know the place incredibly well. I love coming here, always have done, and now I've decided it's the time in my life, perhaps, where I want to have a place overseas, because I have possibly the freedom to spend more time here. So there's a combination of those factors.
And there's lots of options for people who want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have a range of property here that can cater, I think, to a full range of demands. If people are looking for the small studio or small one-bedroom place that doesn't cost them very much, the maintenance charges and upkeep are very, very reasonable, those places are here. And as we've discussed on many occasions, starting perhaps as low as 500,000 baht in some of the older condominiums right in the centre of Pattaya there, not far from Soya Runatai, and going up you can get something new, as we've discussed, in some of the new projects. One bedroom, 35, 36 square meters for around about 1.5 million baht, fully furnished, ready to move in, albeit something that's going to be completed in probably a year or two. At the other end of the spectrum, for people with more disposable income, you have a range of holiday homes, whether they are condominium or houses, to rival most resort areas, certainly around Asia, which is obviously a little way behind resorts in Europe, but nevertheless, I can't think of anywhere else in Asia that perhaps has the breadth of opportunities that Pattaya does for the expat coming here, or at least the overseas buyer coming here and looking for a holiday home.
Okay, now we're getting into the sort of halfway through, down towards the end of 2011. Looking back pre the downfall of the economy, and what was it, 98, I think, officially the first part of the crash. Was there that many places around and that many opportunities at that time for people to buy, or was it pretty much the set where you can have this or this and that's it, there's nothing else?
I think the range of what's now available has certainly changed a little bit. Again, some of the topics we've discussed in recent weeks have included the nature of the new developments, these resort-style properties that are proving to be very popular. Obviously, we've talked about Amazon. I think the Heights Holdings have a similar Laguna Beach resort. The new development, Atlantis, that has been heavily marketed right now. They're all quite similar in that they are focusing on these small one-bedroom condos and some studios, but not very many bigger units at all. The great attraction is the communal areas, big lagoon-style swimming pools, waterfalls, palm trees, really quite a spectacular site in which these units are then based. And that is, to a large extent, quite a new product. It's not something that has traditionally been here. Normally, the vast majority of condominiums, while there have always been studios, have been bigger. I think you would probably find that 3-5 years ago, the average studio condominium here was probably 40 square meters. Now, you're now in these new developments looking at one-bedroom units that are probably an average of 35 or 36 square meters, i.e. smaller than the studios used to be. Studios now are often 22 to 25 square meters. I think it is a reflection of the way the world economy is, in that people still want to buy here, but they don't have as much money to play with. They don't want to bring as much money into Thailand, and again, that's in part due to the situation with the world economy, and also the increased strength of the baht, another topic obviously on which we've touched on many occasions. But no, there are the traditional properties still available, but that's probably the one that is a new one on the scene.
So it's still a growing market. Now, with having the floods all over the place, and I think from overseas it looks like it's everywhere. But when you're in the country, you actually realise that it's not everywhere. It's a few certain places, and some of them are escaping it. Like us here, do you think that's going to get more business? Actually had a media buyer call us from Bangkok over the last couple of days and say, have a customer that wants to advertise in a province that hasn't had flooding or is not affected by the flooding. Do you think we're going to get more business in Pattaya because of that now?
Yeah, I really do. I think a lot of people in this world, myself included, they put a lot of faith in the sort of once bitten, twice shy theory.
Yeah.
You don't like to get hit in the same way twice. And I think now that people have been hit by the floods, they're very well aware of the area in which they live. If they have been affected, those people who have the ability to get out of there may well decide that they don't want to get hit like they've just been hit again.
Yeah.
And certainly I think you can look at the industrial sector, and there's been a lot of news reports about factories in and around Ayutthaya, in and around Bangkok, that have been flooded with very, very deep 3 and 5 meter floodwaters. Now that suggests to me that these factories are in an area of risk, because it's not small flooding. This is very significant flooding indeed, 3 and 5 meters. That suggests that if there are heavy rains again, whether it's next year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, they may well be affected again. And I think a lot of these companies have suffered very significantly in terms of the machinery that's been damaged and lost, And
I did see one with I think it was about 1,000 cars at Honda that had them left in basically just in the floodwater up to a couple of metres deep, and there's nothing they could do about it. They couldn't take them out, couldn't do anything. It was flooded, and that's it. Sorry, end of.
Yeah, and one would anticipate, without knowing what kind of insurance policies these companies have got in place, you would anticipate that this is probably what they call force majeure, i.e. Something that's not insured.
There's a surprise.
Yes.
Insurance companies. Don't we just love them?
Well, indeed. It goes back to my days as a lawyer, and, the thing that always used to really annoy me was that insurance companies are very, very happy and promising the world when they take your premiums. But when you submit a significant claim, they are just obtuse and difficult and ignorant, and it's quite shocking.
I actually just did read something this morning that said insurance companies currently have about 16,000 different categories of possible injuries that they can sort of say, well, actually, it wasn't this particular one, it was this one, which has just been rewritten, and now from 16,000, they've got 140,000 different policies and different categories. Excuses, yes, basically, of what it was you fell into as, well, does that now give you the right to claim insurance or not, because it's now very well scrutinised. So basically, I think they're doing very well, the insurance companies, and the people they pay out, well, not so well.
Well, what I learned as a lawyer was that most insurance companies operate on a very simple basis. They have a certain amount of money to pay out every year, and so long as claims are under that, they will pay them. But they also have a very significant amount of money that is apportioned to paying lawyers each year.
Yeah.
And if they will or are getting close to their limit of payouts each year, they will simply not pay claims. And they may well pursue a legal case, defend a legal case for 3 or 4 years at massive expense, purely on the basis that they want to delay that payment for 1, 2, 3, 4 years. They accept, privately, they accept that it's a claim that they're liable to pay. And the number of times that we were faced with nothing more than delaying tactics, stopping a claim getting to trial for, like I say, perhaps 3 or 4 years. As soon as you're on the steps of the court, and the potential for legal fees to increase very rapidly becomes...
It's time to settle.
Then comes the kind of settlement offer that you'd be mad to refuse, and everything's done and dusted. And it's really a disgraceful way to go about doing business. Although I guess I was a lawyer, and lawyers probably do okay by it, but nevertheless, I found it quite shocking. You know, it wasn't something I appreciated, and one would think that. I'm sure there are going to be a few insurance claims submitted as a result of the floods. I'm not necessarily confident that many of them will be paid.
You're watching The Mix 88.5 Property Update on PMTV. We'll be back in a sec after a cup of tea.
The Mix 88.5 Property Update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratham Nack Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards. The Mix 88.5 Property Update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratham Nack Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards.
Okay, let's stop bashing the insurance companies for a while. So we think some of those companies, as in the Fords that were making their cars up north, are now possibly going to move to the Detroit of the East, as it's called down here, and move things down here. That increases real estate with those sort of people that need to then come and work there and live here. And again, we've got much more. We've got the rentals for the expats that are possibly in the company, and of course all the other places that need the local staff as well.
Well, I think there must be potential for that. I've certainly read that some of the companies who have been affected are not happy and are looking at moving. Whether that means moving within Thailand or outside of Thailand, well, one would anticipate that it would be cheaper for them to move within Thailand rather than an international move. And certainly I've not read anything about how any of the industrial estates here in this region, and I think there are 38 in total of differing sizes. I've not heard of any of them being affected by the flooding.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not going to be affected by flooding this year, then it would be hard to imagine when you would be. Now, obviously, there are other risk factors. I'm not sure I know what they are, but obviously there are positives and negatives with any given location. But it seems to me that this area has been very, very popular when it comes to new companies, new multinational companies moving to Thailand in recent years. A vast majority of them who come here now seem to come to the eastern seaboard. Obviously, some of those estates are technically in Rayong province, some are in Chonburi. But nevertheless, this is the area that people seem to want to come to.
Yeah, they're all sort of under our umbrella, whether it's Chonburi or Rayong or the eastern seaboard or whatever you want to call it. Sort of, yeah, we class all of that as Pattaya these days.
I think it's undoubtedly the case that Pattaya is the focal point for all those industrial estates. And if you're looking at senior management from overseas who come to run these factories, the vast majority of them, with the exception of some Japanese who tend to be based in Sriracha, the vast majority of the others, they and their families tend to be based in Pattaya. Obviously, you've got the hospitals, the restaurants, the schools, and Pattaya is the focal point for all those things, and that's why they tend to be here. I think the other thing that must be taken into consideration is the fact that perhaps some of those companies that are currently based in Ayutthaya, Bangkok, they may well have opened up their factories, offices there when the Bangkok port was a lot more important than it is these days.
Yeah.
I think a big part of the draw for this area has been the growth of Lam Shabang,
Yeah.
and the fact that Lam Shabang is now the dominant port. So if you take that into account as well, there may well be a consideration made. Look, we've had our factory in Ayutthaya or in northern Bangkok for some time. Obviously, we've now had the problem with these floods. That's not great. There must be the potential for that to happen again. In any event, right now, the likelihood is their exports are going out of Lam Shabang. So maybe this will be the catalyst for some of these companies to say, well, let's bite the bullet now, let's make the move. Hopefully we won't be hit by the floods again then, but also we'll actually be moving closer to the port where the majority of our exports and potentially any materials imported come in and go out.
So logistics are going to be easier as well. Should we then say that this is the time and hedge our bets and say, well, let's invest now in something nearby, and therefore, because people are going to come, I'll invest now in the anticipation that they are coming?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, it's all hypothetical at the moment, but I think there are grounds to say that, if anything, this might be good for the region. I don't think it's good for the country, and you might say that other companies that were planning to come to Thailand, they may tar all of Thailand with the same brush.
Yeah.
And that, in that sense, it might not be great for Thailand generally, and included within that is the industrial estates that are here in Chonburi and Rayong. But I think from a domestic standpoint, you might say there is a likelihood for those companies, and is it possible that some of them have been contemplating a change anyway, bearing in mind the advantages that we just went through of this area, not most of all perhaps the proximity of Lam Shabang. But I think it's generally it's likely to be good for the area. I'm not sure there is any specific aspect that you can identify as I should invest in this because of the likely benefit that will take place. I think what you would say is that, as you indicated a minute ago, more people will be coming here, whether it's to live and work at a low level within the factories. I think that's going to happen anyway, whether it's more senior management from overseas who are coming and therefore renting, potentially buying luxury properties in and around Pattaya, whether it's the schools that are getting more, the international schools that are getting more kids, whether it's the big restaurants that are doing more trade. I think there's likely to be some effect on the town, but I think the industrial estates here are liable to grow anyway, and I think they were before the flooding. If the flooding has had any negative effect for Thailand generally,
I would hope that those sort of companies were debating it before the floods happened have now done some little bit of research and said, actually, the place that we were going to go to has been fine, so we'll continue and do that, and we'll move into the eastern seaboard.
You would certainly hope so. I mean, it would be a little bit amateurish and short-sighted if, because there were floods in one part of Thailand, you let that put you off another part of Thailand.
Yeah.
And one would anticipate, certainly those multinationals that I've spoken to before they've moved here, they look at the area and other areas, whether it's in Vietnam, China, wherever, very, very carefully. And they look at all the factors that could possibly affect their decision. They don't do it lightly, they don't do it quickly, so probably it's unlikely that anyone will be put off. But you never know.
Yeah, good stuff. It's Mix 88.5. It's our property update, as it is always every Wednesday. Our guest in the studio, Tim Gladwin, and it's all brought to you by the Tudor Group, that in the final stages of now putting Tudor Court condominium up and running on Pratum Nac Soi 2. Now, we've talked about over the last week and new things coming up. Party we talked about last week. What was the party last week? It's Iguana, isn't it? It's coming up now. It's this week.
That's right. This coming Saturday, on the 22nd of October, at the Centara Grand Mirage. I think that's the full name of the hotel on Wongamat Beach. Anyone who knows Pattaya well will be very familiar with the place, no doubt. A very impressive hotel it is.
Yep, do like it.
I think that starts at 6 o'clock. As we mentioned last week, it is admission by invitation only. However, if you are desperate to go, if you have a word with Julian at Matrix Iguana, he will do his best to accommodate you.
And we're going to be going down there, aren't we? So that's this coming Saturday. Centara Grand Mirage is the launch of, what is that project called now?
Amazon and the Vision. It's a dual launch, and they are describing it, not me, but I'm sure they're correct to do so, as a Hollywood extravaganza. So probably an exciting evening. One would certainly hope so.
Okay, and if you want to know more about some of these projects, get hold of the Pattaya Mail Real Estate Monthly. Maybe have a look at that in just a sec. But there is another one after that. After we've mentioned that one last week, somebody else had a quick listen and said, oh, please mention our launch.
Yes, indeed. The Atlantis development, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, is a similar development in many ways to Amazon.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And they have a launch party coming up also at the Centara Grand Mirage a week later, the 29th of October.
Everybody likes that hotel. It's a really good hotel, the Centara Grand Mirage. It's a nice location. They've got all the right bits and pieces. So there's going to be two biggies coming up at those parties. And I believe that Paul Strachan from PMTV is actually going to be hosting one or the other. I'm not sure which one it is.
Yes, certainly. I think he told me he's doing the Atlantis one.
Okay.
They didn't mention what time it starts. I presume it's probably 6 o'clock again.
We'll maybe get some more information later.
Yeah, I asked for some by email, but it didn't arrive.
Okay.
But like I say, I'm sure if you contact the sales office, they will be more than happy to provide any additional information. And one would anticipate that if you're interested in the project, then you'll also be able to get an invitation. Again, I understand that it is admission by invitation there.
Or if you buy a unit, you can come down and enjoy the party.
Well, absolutely.
Now looking at that, there's two big parties with launches coming up this week and then next week. And for me, it sort of goes back to a few years ago when there was lots of these sort of parties, mainly initiated by Raymond Ladd and Nigel at the time. Does that mean then the economy is getting better? People are more confident in it, and the resurgence of all these great big parties that are coming up. The developers are now pretty happy with what's going on, and they're pretty confident that once we launch something, we can spend several baht, and I won't tell you what the number in front of it is, several baht, and help push that project forward.
Well, I think it's undoubtedly the case that recent months and perhaps the last couple of years, there's been a very strong growth in the number of off-plan condominium units being sold. A number of very successful developments. Raymond Land, you can say, look at Zaya, Matrix Iguana, Heights Holdings, a number of projects that they've both done very, very well on. Nova Group and various other developments have done exceptionally well. And other people have seen this and they want to join the party. Obviously, those companies have already been doing well, want to continue their success, and so they've been launching more projects, and the other projects have been launched to a large extent on the basis of their undoubted success. As we have discussed previously, much of the success relates specifically to smaller units, whether it's in a high-end beachfront development or something that's a little bit cheaper away from the beach. But nevertheless, it's been very, very popular, both with an increasing number of Thai buyers, many of them from Bangkok, but also foreign buyers. We hear of an awful lot of Russians buying, and a mix of other buyers from all over the place. So Yeah, it's a reflection of the success of those projects. The market generally is doing okay, but it's certainly nothing like the market for new off-plan, relatively small condos.
Okay, well, I like the idea of these companies having a big bash to celebrate the launch or the opening of a particular project, and it sort of takes me back to a few years ago when they were happening on a regular basis, and I have that feel now that the economy's sort of getting better and business is picking up and people are feeling better, so I like that aspect of it. So a couple of good parties coming up over the next couple of weeks. I shall enjoy them both, or at least try to enjoy them both. Let's have a quick look at the money this week, and we see that the pound has done nothing whatsoever, 48.23, 48.25 last week, so nothing much has happened there. The US dollar has had a little bit of resurgence. It's 31.64 now, and last week 31.01. Is that because we're going to get a new president? Or possible new president?
Well, I'm not sure, because I'm not sure there's an alternative who really impresses you massively.
Well, nobody seems to like him at the moment.
No, but I'm sure that's absolutely right, and you know, he's not exactly performed brilliantly. But then again, you look at the state of the Republican Party, and you probably sigh.
Okay, so there's no good one coming at that one. Now, the Australian, we've looked at the Australian dollar quite some time now. It took a bit of a dive, a month and a half ago? It's now got another resurgence again. Last week it was up 1 baht to 30.50, and this week it's up another baht, 31.5.
Yes.
So that's good for the Aussie dollar.
It's bouncing around like a crazed kangaroo. It really is.
Okay, so and we still don't know why.
I've no idea.
We're going to have to find some Australians sometime. Damien, maybe we can have contact with him and see how things are going. He's still got some business there.
Indeed. It is strange.
And the euro, there's not much change in the euro, despite all the problems with everybody being downgraded, along with Greece saying no chance of us paying our bills, mate. But the euro, 42.26 last week, and it's 42.28 this week. It's hardly worth mentioning how much it's gone up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic example, I think, of it's not the reality, it's the confidence. And if the confidence is already low, how much lower can it go, I guess?
Yep. All right. So if you're putting your money over here now, 2 million baht, a condo for 2 million baht this week costs you $65,247 US dollars. If you're putting that in pounds, it's $41,463 pounds rather, if you're buying your 2 million baht condo in pounds, which again still will get you very little in the UK, very little in the States or anywhere else actually, but here you can still get a very nice, actually you get one of those things at Tudor Court for about 2 million, can't you?
Yeah, 2 million baht goes a reasonably long way these days. It really does. In a new building, you're probably looking at a 1-bedroom unit. In some of the older buildings, there's the odd 2-bedroom unit for that price.
And I believe Tudor Court having their extra double skin walls and all the extra windows, Euro PVC and all that sort of stuff. I think they're about the 2 million baht mark at the moment. I'll check with Simon later on, but I think they're well worth the extra bit that you would pay these days.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I'm sure you can get something in there for less than 2 million even.
Now, I'm not sure we've got enough time to get into all of this we've got with our property of the week this week, so maybe we'll save that to next week, unless you want to give a very small snippet of what it could be.
Well, it's just upon the relaunch of the park, which is a development that a lot of people will be familiar with. There are a couple of very good deals on offer. Obviously, they need checking out because they require upfront payment for a unit that can't yet be transferred. But there is an offer for a 3 million baht, 110 square metre, 1-bedroom unit, or alternatively a 2-bedroom, which I think is 145 square metres thereabouts, for 4.5 million baht. Like I say, the catch is you've got to pay up front, and you don't get the unit yet. But if you're confident, it could be a good gamble.
It sounds like you would want to have a very careful look at it before you chuck your money down, and if you've got plenty of money to sort of sit there and let it while away for a while before they finish everything, then it's a bargain.
Yeah, you really need to. They've got new financing in place. Obviously, you need to check that out. You need to check out to make sure that everything is as it should be and there are no catches. But if it all checks out, it could be a really good buy, because the face value of these properties is probably a little bit more than double what they're asking for these two special offers.
Okay, all good stuff. That's about all we've got time for this week on our property update. As always, thanks to Tim Gladwin. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Russell.
038252588 if you want to get hold of Tim, or send us an email, patia@solmansthailand.com, and questions can come there, or studio@mix885.com. Don't forget to get down to Tudor Court and see the latest developments. Are they about to launch that brand new condo?
You've been watching the Mix 88.5 property update on PMTV. We'll see you same time, same place next week.
The Mix 88.5 property update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court condominium, Pratam Nak Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards.